or tune it in the sun. This is TFM. Get ready to rock. From AM to PM. Come on. Let's talk.
Presenting TFM. The most happening music, the most important news, and most importantly, your views. At Times of Oman radio station. TFM. Let's talk.
Live on TFM and the TFM Facebook page. This is the live feed of TTV. Let's talk.
Hello and welcome to Outline. Here are the latest updates from our newsroom. The Ministry of Health today announced the registration of 14 new coronavirus deaths in Oman. The death toll has now touched 273 in Oman due to the virus so far, the officials at the Ministry of Health informed. They also extended their deepest condolences to the family of the deceased. Officials at the Ministry of Health also announced the registration of 1,389 new coronavirus cases in the country today. 1,050 of the new cases are Omani nationals and 339 for non-Omanis, bringing the total number of coronavirus cases registered in the Sultanate to 59,568. According to the Ministry of Health, this number also includes the recovery of 37,987 patients and 273 deaths. The ministry urged everyone to adhere to social distancing instructions issued by the Supreme Committee and the Ministry of Health, as well as staying at home and not going out unless necessary. It's time for a quick commercial break, but stay tuned as we'll be right back with more news your way. Welcome back to TTV. You're watching Outline. For the first time in Oman, more than 6,000 people were tested for COVID-19 in 24 hours, leading to 2,164 new cases of the disease on Monday, July 13th, the data from the Ministry of Health revealed. A total number of 6,173 samples were tested, taking the total samples tested to 244,487 on Monday, of which 58,179 people were tested positive. The Tarassud app, which provides daily updates on COVID-19 situation in the country, reported that Muscat Governorate recorded 827 cases yesterday. With 340 cases, the total seemed in touch to 12,338 cases. Wilayat Boshur reported 230 new cases, making it the second wilayat that saw more cases in Oman. Wilayat of Amirat recorded 89 new cases, while Wilayat of Qurayyat reported 59, Wilayat of Matra 52, and Muscat reported 49 new cases on Monday. Outside the Governorate of Muscat, the biggest jump in new cases was seen in the North Al-Batina Governorate, which reported 526 new cases to reach a total of 7,530 reported cases so far. South Batina registered 229 new cases, taking the total in the Governorate to 6,029 reported cases as of July 13th. Southern Dhofar Governorate reported another 145 new cases, taking the total number of reported coronavirus cases to 1,967. In Ad-Dahira, 141 cases were reported, publishing the total number of cases to 1,019. The number of cases in Ad-Dakhliya rose to 3,116 after 139 new cases were reported there. The total number of COVID-19 cases in South Al-Sharqiya Governorate crossed the 14,000 infection mark after 75 new cases were reported there. In addition, 63 new cases also came to the light in North Al-Sharqiya, taking the total to 1,272. Al Buraimi Governorate registered 631 cases of infection after 18 more people were reported to have caught the disease. In the Northern Governorate, the presence of another one case brought the total number of infections to 37. The only region in Oman to not register a new case yesterday was the Central Al-Wusta Governorate. A serological survey of COVID-19 will be conducted to study the situation of at-risk children, an official from the Ministry of Health announced. Dr. Amal bin Saif Al-Mani, Director of Infection Prevention and Control in the Ministry of Health, said, "The National Serological Survey of COVID-19 infection will study the situation of children at risk of infection and measures the effectiveness of their antibodies." She also said that it will provide indicators on the prevalence of coronavirus in the Sultanate, and it will verify the validity of the infection of 1% of the population, those infected and those with no symptoms. It will determine the possibility of returning to schools or implementing distancing learning methods, she added. White was by far the most popular among new vehicles registered in Oman, with silver being a distant second, closely followed by grey. The total number of vehicles registered by their colors, engine capacity, and weights as at the end of May 2020 reached 1.53 million, according to a recent update from the National Center for Statistics and Information. Among colors, white was the most preferred color for vehicles in the Sultanate, with as many as 660,244 vehicles sporting white color. Silver was the second choice with 1,966 vehicles. Grey was the third most prominent vehicle color, with more about 116,130 vehicles. This was followed by blue, black, gold, and red colored vehicles with 87,386, 73,880, 71,212, and 65,637 respectively. As for the engine capacity, the NCSI report indicated that the majority of vehicles, which is about 817,512, had engine capacities between 1,500 and 3,000 cc, while 345,457 vehicles had engine capacities between 3,001 and 4,500 cc. The number of vehicles with engine capacity above 4,500 cc stood at 1,096. In terms of weights, the report said that majority of vehicles weighed less than 3 tons, with their number reaching to 1.38 million. 17 flights to as many cities this week have been organized over the rest of this week to repatriate foreign nationals from Oman who wish to travel home during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Aircraft with expatriates who live and work in Oman will take off between 14 and 18 July to cities in India, Pakistan, Egypt, Germany, and Greece, some of which are part of repatriation plans organized by governments of countries that have sent large numbers of foreign workers to Oman. Indian nationals who wish to travel on Vande Bharat repatriation flights are requested to fill in their details in a Google document that has been shared on the Embassy of India in Oman's website and social media pages. A Vande Bharat flight will land in India at both Mangalore and Bangalore on July 14th airports. On July 14th, 3 more flights have been organized. Oman Air has organized a special flight to Athens, while Salam Air flights to Sialkot in Pakistan and Alexandria in Egypt are also scheduled to take off. 3 flights will take off on July 15th, their destinations being Srinagar in India, Multan in Pakistan, and Cairo in Egypt. On July 16th, 3 Salam Air's flights will head to Islamabad, Lahore, and Peshawar in Pakistan. An Oman Air flight will travel to Frankfurt in Germany, and 1 more Vande Bharat aircraft will land at Lucknow in northern India. The flight to Frankfurt is among 3 scheduled during the coming weeks, with the other 2 planned for 26th and 29th July. On July 17, 2 Vande Bharat flights will take off from Muscat and land in Vijayawada and Mumbai, while on the 18th one has been scheduled to land in Delhi. Those who wish to travel to one of the flights to India while filling their information must mention the flight on which they wish to travel and provide contact details including their name, age, gender, passport number, and the reasons why they need to travel to India. Passengers with most compelling reasons will be given the first preference to board these planes. They are also required to provide their contact numbers in India and Oman, their home state, and their reasons for traveling overseas in the first place. The Authority for Electricity Regulation in Oman has launched an initiative under the name Kafa and Ata in cooperation with Darul Ata Charity Association and Oman Environmental Services Holding Company SAOC BIA. The initiative aims to replace old air conditions in houses of the needy families with new ones. The move comes within the initiatives of Authority for Electricity Regulation to develop the local community and as part of its corporate responsibility towards the community. The houses which benefit from this initiative would be chosen on certain conditions under the supervision of Darul Ata Association. Under the initiative, split unit air conditioners would replace air conditioners more than 10 years old. These air conditioners are a key factor in the increase of power consumption and hence payment of higher electricity charges by such families. Oman Environmental Services Holding Company SAOC BIA would ensure safe disposal of old air conditions and would work on recycling of such old machines in cooperation with SMEs, which would be given priority in installation of new air conditioner units at the houses of the needy families. The Economic and the Financial Committee of Majlis Ashura on Monday completed its deliberations on the value-added tax known as VAT law draft forwarded to the Majlis by the government. In this context, the committee hosted Saud bin Nasir al-Shakaili, Deputy Chairman of the Tax Authority, and a number of specialists from the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, the Tax Authority and the Public Authority for Consumer Protection to listen to their views about provisions of the draft law and to enable them to present their comments and proposals. This discussion took place during the 15th meeting of the Majlis' first annual convening of its 9th term. The session was chaired by Suleiman bin Ali al-Hakmani, head of the Economic and Financial Committee. The meeting discussed all aspects of the VAT draft law and its expected effects and impacts on commerce and industry sectors and the economy as a whole. The Economic and Financial Committee will present its report, quoting outcomes and recommendations for further review during the Majlis regular sessions. Eid al-Adha is expected to fall on Friday, July 31st, a member of Astronomical Affairs at the Ministry of Awqaf and Religious Affairs has said. According to Miro officials, if the weather is clear, we'll be able to see the crescent month of Dhul Hijjah on Tuesday, July 21st evening in the Sultanate sky. Miro also continued to report that the crescent of the lunar month of Dhul Hijjah 1441 is to be spotted on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020, and if they are able to be seen, Wednesday would be the first day of Dhul Hijjah and Friday, July 31st, corresponding to 10th Dhul Hijjah, will be the first day of Eid al-Adha. If the sighting of the crescent is not confirmed, Saturday, August 1st will be the first day, according to the Miro official. According to the Royal Decree number 56/2020, to determine the dates of official holidays, Eid al-Adha holiday will be from 9th to 12th of Dhul Hijjah. If any of the 2 days of the weekly vacation or both of them fall within the aforementioned days of vacation, then 1 day will be compensated. It's time for a quick commercial break, but stay tuned as we have amazing guests joining us for the next session who will be talking about hospitality during the time of COVID-19. So stay tuned. Welcome back to TTV. You're watching Outline. Before going a quick commercial break, I inform that we have amazing guests joining us for the session that is going to be about hospitality during the time of COVID-19. Today for the session, we have got Mr. Michael Cohn, Cluster General Manager for Park Inn by Radisson, Mr. Amit Garg, Director of Operations and Development, Al Nahda Hotels and Resort, Dr. Syed Mujahid Hussain, Head of Department, College of Economics and Political Sciences at Sultan Qaboos University joining us. Thank you so much, each one of you, for joining us today.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah, it's a pleasure.
I would like to begin the show by congratulating Mr. Michael and Mr. Amit for being able to mitigate the COVID-19 impacts so far. I would like to ask you both what so far has been the experience for both of you. Mr. Amit, would you like to take a lead on this, please?
The experience has been extremely challenging, but full of various discoveries and most importantly, how to deal with uncertainty. We all have dealt with various issues in the past, but this one was very different. This one is very different, and it has made us go through a lot of measures of safety, security, well-being, looking at employees, keeping the welfare of guests. So it has been altogether on a very different scale.
Thank you, Mr. Amit. Mr. Michael, would you like to add something to it? What has your experience been for the past few months?
Yeah, well, this is obviously something that we haven't seen before, where from the beginning everybody was somehow hopeful that it wouldn't affect us that badly, to more or less coming to a complete standstill of the industry worldwide. Hotels in Oman have been closed. Were closed down. The Park Inn hotels, we remained open. Had the opportunity and also the obligation to house our stranded guests from that have been with us for a long time. But we also had the opportunity then later on to house the students that have been returning to Oman that had to stay in isolation for 14 days. And I have to say the experience, the dedication of my team there, having this uncertainty, housing those guests, not knowing what the impact is, and in the early stages not knowing how personally you can get affected, is really showed me the true meaning of hospitality again, and our yes I can service philosophy behind it. So yeah, very interesting months.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Dr. Syed, I know the show is about hospitality during the COVID-19, but I would really like to take the audience, to the basics and ask you that, in your expert opinion, how do you think tourism, how important is tourism for any country, let alone Oman?
Thanks for having me on the show. Madhya, tourism is actually very important. If I, give you some numbers, the travel and tourism sector currently accounts for about 10% of the global GDP. The aggregate GDP of the world was, if I translate this into numbers, the aggregate GDP of the world was about 142 trillion US dollars in 2019. So the tourism sector contributed about 15 trillion US dollars in the aggregate GDP of the world, which is a huge number. In terms of the employment generation, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, this sector contributes about 1 in 10 of the world's jobs. So this is how important it is. If we look at some individual countries, I was looking at some numbers, the Thailand, Egypt, India, Turkey to some extent, they heavily rely on the tourism. For Thailand, the contribution of the travel and tourism to GDP was 21.6% in 2018, while for Egypt and Turkey each, tourism contributed about 12% in the GDP during the same period. So you can see that it contributes on average about 10% in the world's GDP. This is how important it is. If we talk about Oman, Oman lags behind quite a bit. So if we look at the same numbers for Oman, in 2018, tourism sector contributed 2.9% to the GDP of Oman, and the direct added value of the tourism sector was 912 million in 2018, contributing about 2.9% to the GDP of Oman, as I said earlier. Having said that, so Oman sees a lot of growth potential in this sector. So if we look at the same numbers for the UAE, for example, the tourism industry contributed about 5% to the national GDP during the same period. So Oman is lagging behind compared to its regional partners. However, Oman sees this as an opportunity, and therefore they have rightly identified this sector as one of the potentially, high growth sectors in their Tanfeed program. So I think Oman is, or at least it was moving into the right direction before the COVID came. And I hope that they will be able to catch up with the with other regional countries such as UAE and so on.
Dr. Said, like you just mentioned that, it was Oman was actually trying to catch up with the other regional partners, and then COVID just happened. Could you please tell us what are the social and economic benefits of tourism and how COVID-19 has its impact on these benefits?
So if I break your question down into two parts, the first is the economic and social impacts. So when we look at the economic impacts, so hospitality generates revenue for local economies directly. So, the direct benefit comes from when tourists spend money in hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues, etc. It also helps economies indirectly because tourists purchase retail goods, pharmacy items and locally made souvenirs and crafts, etc. So it really helps economically the local industries. If we look at the social impacts, this tourism is actually very important for the arts and culture of the country, because if you remember, we used to have the Muscat Festival, like in sort of late January, early February. I have been there myself. We used to see a lot of tourists. So this is actually supporting the local art and culture industry. So this has a huge impact on both economic and social life of the country. How would this affect? Unfortunately, this will have a huge effect on both the social and economic benefits of Oman. For example, as tourism is drying up, it is leading to elimination of jobs for the locals and even closure of many local businesses, especially the small and medium enterprises. According to the World Tourism and Travel Council, this pandemic could hit 100 million jobs worldwide, which is a huge number. And obviously, Oman would be one country which would also be affected by this. So unfortunately, it will have lots of adverse consequences on the social and economic life in Oman.
Mr. Amit, I'm sure you heard Dr. Syed talking about the benefits of the tourism to the country and also how COVID-19 has affected these benefits. I would like to ask you, sir, that how soon after the arrival of COVID-19 did you begin seeing the impact?
The impact was becoming very visible from, let's say, February end, and in March onwards, it was very, very in your face, and we all hoped and prayed and thought that, it will just pass by and we will not be impacted. But the fact was, cancellations started pouring in because of COVID, and there was a large amount of uncertainty among even travelers themselves who were willing to travel but did not know whether it is safe to travel, what measures are there. So ultimately, it all melted to cancellations, which started pouring in from March, and restrictions started coming in earlier. So we were first hoping that restrictions will not lead into cancellations. There would be amendments and changes, but it didn't work that way, the way we were thinking that it would. And at the end, March onwards, it was just a downpour of cancellations for our resorts and most of the hotels in Oman and other countries as well. Because when I check up with my friends in other countries in terms of how are they faring, it is not very different because everywhere it became a full stop.
Right. Mr. Michael, how was it at your end?
No, I fully agree. Pretty much mid-March is was the main impact, or the main impact started. It's the hotel industry gets to feel any disturbances very quickly and is immediately affected because travel just stops. And it's not only the tourism part, it's commercial travel that stops, the corporate visits. So you just see the occupancies dropping further and further, and that's where it's immediately impacting you, and then you start putting your measures in place how to overcome these circumstances, not knowing where it's going to go.
Right. Mr. Michael and Mr. Amit both mentioned about the cancellations of the reservations. If I have to ask you to, like when you're talking about the cancellation of the reservations and you had to compare it with 2019, how did you see the cancellation? How big the change did you notice in these 2 years if you compare? Mr. Amit?
Look, I don't think 2019 and 20 can be compared if you want to look at it, because 2019 was sort of a normal year kind of a scenario. In 2020, COVID is the first pandemic which was declared. So the way I look at it, March onwards, it was sort of a wipeout. If you look at businesses which used to come to Oman or to anywhere else because of restrictions and then flight issues and then safety security concerns, it all stopped. So for us, we are largely dependent upon international leisure travel for our resorts, other than local and GCC travel, which happens. So I think one thing which killed us all more than the pandemic was the fear. And March onwards, then there was sort of a washout. And if you compare with 2019, the numbers are humongous versus 1919 is nothing in terms of cancellations received, what we received in 2020.
Mr. Michael, would you like to add to that question?
Yeah, I fully agree. We can't really compare 2019 and 2020 or pre-pandemic to now during the pandemic. The key thing is when travel restrictions are put in place, as we have them currently, then you get cancellations. And we're, of course, part of a global company as Radisson Hotels. We very quickly reacted and adjusted our global cancellation policies to be flexible there and help our guests. And that was our main drive, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. It's time for a quick commercial break, but stay tuned as we are still in conversation with our 3 esteemed guests who have joined us for the session today. Stay tuned. Welcome back to TTV. You're watching online. Before going on a commercial break, we were talking about when the hotels and the resorts have started seeing the effect of the pandemic and how it actually turned out to, how it led to more cancellations compared to last year. And Mr. Amit and Mr. Michael, if I'm not wrong, the season for tourism starts in Oman starting from January and it lasts until March or beginning of April, right?
It does.
So that's when actually the pandemic took. I think it actually came to Oman, and that's when everything started collapsing in the country.
Yes, you can say so.
We are live right now on our Facebook, and we have started receiving questions from our viewers right now. Dr. Sayed, the question actually is for you. One of the viewers is asking that, talking about Oman and tourism, that Oman is actually looking into tourism. Do you think there is any country or any example that Oman can follow, especially during the COVID-19 crisis, to actually catch up?
I think they can, because one good thing about Oman is that it has a lot of space. So we can still follow the SOPs and we can invite the tourists to come here to Oman. Because this is going to be hugely important in the post-COVID area after the pandemic is over or when it starts to get over. So this is going to be hugely important. So if we can market this very well, in our campaign to attract the foreign tourists, I think this is a good opportunity. In fact, that Oman has a lot of space. And as a matter of fact, most of the tourists here in Oman come from Europe. And Europeans have this mentality they want to have their own space. So this is something that we can definitely highlight in our marketing campaign, and we can attract the tourists back in Oman after the COVID is gone.
Thank you, Dr. Syed. One more question your way, Dr. Syed, is that how will, you're talking about international tourism and people coming from Europe and other parts of the world. Considering COVID-19 pandemic right now in the country, how do you think is going to affect the spending of these tourists?
This is a very important question. As actually Mr. Michael and Mr. Amit were also saying, that this has created a lot of fear. And we know, from the economic theory, whenever there is an uncertainty, people actually stop spending, or they resort to keeping cash, which is kind of a safe haven. So this is why we have also seen one evidence of actually that is that people have started saving, especially the US dollars, and this is why US dollar has also appreciated against other currencies. So it is definitely going to hit the spending behavior of people. People would actually spend less because these are uncertain times and people don't know how long it is going to persist. So, we should actually be saving more money so that, in case we lose our job, we have something to live on. So this is going to affect negatively the spending behavior of consumers.
Right. Mr. Amit, you are there working in the resort and you are right in the core of the business, you and Mr. Michael both. So, considering the COVID-19 situation, what are the challenges that you all are facing right now in terms of the services, in terms of departments like foods and beverages, gym, pool, etc.?
Look, first and foremost, most important thing is safety and security of our colleagues at the resort and our esteemed guests. That is the biggest priority at this point of time. And I think that is across the entire team, not just into any department. Services are being very selectively offered, like at this point of time, at our Sahab Resort and Spa in Jabal Akhtar, that is operational. We have rooms and room service, that is what is operational. The pool, the spa, all the other public services are not being offered to the guests. They are temporarily suspended. And similarly, when we start our dunes by Al Nada and Al Nada Resort and Spa from 15th of July, we are offering rooms and room service only. So at this point of time, services are very, very selective. The whole idea is to manage the situation, however, give guests an opportunity that they can move out of their houses because they have been stuck in their own spaces for a very long time, so that they can feel better, enjoy the place, enjoy the scenery, and at the same time take good care of their health and the health of our colleagues. That is what is most important.
So, Mr. Amit, you just mentioned that Al Nada Resort is opening for room services, I think, for tomorrow onwards, right? July 15th?
Yes, Al Nada and Dunes by Al Nada. Both of our resorts, one in Barka and the second in Wadi Al Abiyat, which is a high-end luxury tented accommodation resort. So that will be operational from tomorrow. Sahab Resort and Spa in Jabal Al Akhtar, that is already operational, and we all will be operational. Looking forward to welcome guests and offering rooms, accommodation, and food and beverages through room service only.
Well, congratulations on that, Mr. Amit. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
Mr. Michael, coming to you, what are the challenges that you all are facing? The same question goes for you, what I asked Mr. Amit in terms of food, beverages at the various departments like gyms, pool, etc.
Yeah, I think the main challenge is, of course, you have to adjust all of your protocols, all of your safety protocols. You have to train each team member again, over and over again on these new protocols and on these new safety measures that you put in place and on the new hygiene standards that you're putting in place, of course. So the main challenge is training and getting the staff, of course, onto these training programs. We are in the excellent position that we have all of these training materials online on our training academies, so we are able to maintain, even amongst the team members, social distancing when training them, so you don't have to put them in a training room. you can actually let them do these trainings individually, one by one. So that's a very good support. But of course, one of the main things is you have to adjust your operations. Room service is currently the only thing that we're able to provide our guests to. But you have to prepare, of course, once we reopen, and the guidelines from the Ministry of Tourism are very clear. But your social distancing needs to be in place in the restaurants, so you have to prepare for all of that. But yeah, one of the other key things is, of course, the main challenge is when you're coming as a guest to a hotel, you're friendly staff. So you have to now adjust and try to find a way how to smile behind a mask, which is not that easy.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. Mr. Amit, you spoke about opening the resort from tomorrow onwards. The services are going to be functional. So considering keeping COVID right now, we're going through the peak season of coronavirus across Oman. How are you planning to mitigate the impact of coronavirus to your customers as well as your staff and employees?
We have had extended training sessions, and we heavily relied on the online services which were made available, and training material first and foremost is adjusting our employees with the new protocol, the safety protocol, and making them understand that their well-being is equally important as that of guests, and making them understand what can be done, what can't be done. Our team is all used to going the extra mile. So first and foremost, it is getting them in line, in sync in terms of what we do and what we don't. So do's and don'ts are becoming very, very clear. So that is how first and foremost we have put across the team. And for our guests, particularly right from the reservations, we're trying to go as much contactless as possible and communicating with them in advance in terms of what to expect, what are the protocols, what they get, what they don't get at the resort. All those things we are trying to educate our guests. We are relying heavily on the social media and our own databases to get across to our prospective customers. And that is the way which we have taken, and social media has really helped because we have kept in touch with our guests, and who are very happy to know that we are opening, and they have reached out to us in terms of making their bookings.
Thank you, Mr. Amit. Dr. Said, we are talking about hospitality, tourism, reopening of some services at Al Nahda and hopefully at Parkin maybe very soon too. I don't want to ignore the fact about the direct and indirect benefits associated with setting up a hotel. Could you please shed a little light on that?
Yes, sure. The direct impact includes all projected revenues that will be generated from consumers at the new hotel. And this also includes all rooms revenues, food and beverages revenues from restaurants and banqueting, as well as other potential revenue sources such as power, parking. So this is the direct benefits of setting up a hotel. The direct impact also includes employee salaries as well as other wages that you pay to the temporary construction workers who actually build those hotels. And the indirect impact includes the effect on associated businesses such as suppliers and tourist operators and so on. So setting up a hotel has many direct and indirect benefits, such as those I mentioned. So I hope that, as Oman was preparing actually to set up more hotels, more facilities for the tourists, after the COVID-19 is gone, then we will see again the, construction activity picking up of those resorts.
Dr. Syed, as far as tourism goes, how much will people, look for both value of money and safety right now, considering the COVID-19 situation?
They will definitely look for both because, so there will be additional SOPs for the air travelers. So that would actually add the cost for the travelers. And I think probably Amit and Michael can shed more light on this, but having the additional SOPs at the hotels and probably lower occupancy and so on, it will also add to the cost. So, there has to be a very delicate balance between having too many SOPs, and between if it becomes too costly, then definitely people will be reluctant to come and stay at the hotels. So this is something that needs to be looked at.
Mr. Amit, what kind of concerns or like what type of common concerns that you have been facing from your staff and employers, and what exactly are the measures ensuring their safety have been taking place?
First and foremost, since this is an unforeseen kind of a pandemic, which all of us are facing for the first time, first and foremost was the uncertainty in terms of when do guests come, and then their own health and well-being. These were the two common occurrences which were there. So the way we dealt with it is the training basically took care of their concerns towards their health and making them understand that, look, this is not going to go away. We will have to accept it. This is not a few weeks that it is a virus and it dies and the temperature rises. That was one of the notions which was very much prevalent earlier in the month of March, that come summer, this virus will die because the temperatures will rise. So when we introduced the training part and put across the protocols as prescribed by the government, experts and WHO in terms of masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, everywhere in all public areas for the staff, sanitizing of areas after every use, that became most important, particularly small things like door handles, electrical switches. All those things are touched by various people and you need to be careful. So attention to detail came into being, and we again looked at, made it a process, a thought through process that, look, this is a way of life and this is a way of life which is going to remain for some time, till the time we can become virus free or till the time COVID is over. So staff, that way we have been blessed with a very good team, which is very understanding. They adapted to the situation very fast and they came forward in terms of meeting the challenge as a full team, saying we are ready to face whatever it comes and we will overcome like we have overcome earlier issues as well. So that way I feel really blessed to have a wonderful team at my company.
Well, I'm sure, Mr. Amit, that's the spirit that is going to keep us going in this pandemic these days.
Thank you.
Mr. Michael, I have the same question towards you. What are the common concerns faced by your staff, and what kind of safety measures have you taken place ensuring their well-being during COVID-19?
Let's start with the safety measures. We're, as mentioned earlier, we're part of a global hotel group, of course, and we've, in all of our hotels worldwide, we've implemented a 20-step protocol for the hotel and 10-step for meeting and events. This basically ensures, of course, physical distancing. So we have stickers pretty much everywhere in the hotel, so that it ensures that you are 2 meters apart. You have an increased cleaning and disinfection schedule. You have the air circulation is increased. So I'm not going to go through all the 20 steps, of course, but it's a huge protocol. You have to make sure that all of your checklists are adjusted so that the high touch points are constantly looked at and cleaned, disinfected. You buy additional equipment, fogging machines for disinfecting. All these places, or all these things are in place. Sanitizing stations in the rooms, in the elevators, so that every time that you as a guest something, you immediately have a chance to sanitize and have that feeling of safety as well. But we partnered up with a global audit company called SGS. They're the world leading inspection, verification, testing company, and they've conducted on all of our hotels, including here in Oman, and all of ours. And we're happy that we passed these audits. So they present you with a huge catalog of questions and measures that you have to put in place, and they audit and verify that you are doing this. And but also forward, the Ministry of Tourism has sent out guidelines that you very strictly follow and make sure that this is all in place. When it comes to the biggest concern of the team and the staff members, although in my opinion they're all superheroes because they go through this with all the emotions that it goes through and all the fears, but they still show up at work and they still serve guests even though they are not sure, as you don't know who is, whether it's a positive a guest that is a positive case in front of you or not, but they're still serving them as normal. So it's the main concern is basically that you have to reassure your team members that they're not left alone. And obviously, on a global level, we also had employee members that were tested positive. And then you have to make sure that you're getting in touch with them, that you take care of them. And this goes in our company so far that our president and CEO even called them personally to ensure that they're and that they're taken care of, and that to check on how they're doing. And this is, of course, a reinsurance that the team also needs.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. We have to take a quick commercial break right now, but stay tuned as we'll be right back very shortly. Mr. Amit and Mr. Michael, while we were on the short break, I just came up with this thought that, while you guys are reserving the bookings of your customers and visitors who are coming, is there any process of you asking for certain documentation, asking for COVID-19 tests, or like any clearance from their medical authorities ensuring that, they're all good to be, all good to come to your resorts and hotels? Mr. Amit?
While making booking, we have a set of questions which a guest needs to answer. That is one way of qualifying the guest. Second is if the guests have had any medical test in the past, that is another thing which is there. But at this point of time, again, the COVID test report is not mandatory to my knowledge. So not everybody has had tests, but we are trying to qualify in as much as possible. And when they check it, the temperature scans and all those things are being done. And also there is minimal contact at all of our resorts with our guests. That is what our approach is to safeguard guests and our employees.
Thank you, Mr. Amit. Mr. Michael, are there any such rules and regulations while booking at Park-In?
Well, of course, we have certain protocols and check-in procedures. We check the temperature of the guest, etc. But the difficult thing is there, of course, you don't know whether somebody is tested positive or negative, and the guests very often don't know that themselves. You can carry the virus, not showing any symptoms. And that's the dangerous part about this. So we follow the guidelines that are set by the Ministry of Tourism. We check temperature not only from guests, from staff, anybody who enters the hotel. That is the key thing. And yeah, social distancing is the other part, and make sure that the disinfection is in place as in high frequencies. To ensure that wherever there is a touch point, that is taken care of.
Dr. Said, as I'm sure you can hear the two experts talking about, how the safety measures have been taken at the resorts and hotels for ensuring the well-being of the visitors. Considering yourself as a common man who would actually like to take a vacation, what would your concerns be? Like, what are the things that you would be concerned about, or what would your fears be?
Well, first of all, it has also impacted our personal travel plans big times. We were actually planning a trip to Europe, in addition to have a regular visit to Pakistan, on a yearly basis to see our parents. So this has actually now come to tatters because we can't go anywhere because Oman is not still allowing the inbound traffic, right? So this is one thing. Another thing is that even if Oman would actually allow it, I will be very, very careful because especially if we are traveling with the kids, it is very difficult to actually set all the protocols for them, not touching anything here and there, especially while you are traveling, while you are going into the aircraft. So this is still going to be quite risky, and I think it is going to take quite a lot of time. According to the World Travel and Tourism Council, they mentioned that it may take actually 2 to 3 years before it comes back to the normal or sort of new normal. People will not feel very comfortable. Um, they would not travel unnecessarily. They will only travel for very, necessary trips until we have a vaccine. And even once we have a vaccine, it will take a lot of time before people at very large scale get vaccinated. So people will still have a lot of safety concerns, even after the peak starts to, go down and things sort of starts becoming normal. But I think it is going to take quite a lot of time, and people will still be very, very cautious.
Mr. Amit, how do you see the situation of hotels and resorts for the next 6 or 12 months in Oman?
I remain cautiously optimistic for things to become better. But in the next 6 months, I think we'll have to live more with the local tourism and to an extent with GCC, because intercontinental travel would be very slow to come by. That is what I feel, until and unless there is vaccine comes there, vaccine is available and everybody is immunized, and then only it can happen. But business has to go on, and this is in the human spirit. So I'm definitely hopeful that we will together find a meaningful way through which we'll be able to bypass. This is not going to go away in a jiffy, and we'll need to live with it and learn to live with it and bypass it as well.
Right. Mr. Michael, how do you see the situation of hotel sectors in Oman for the next 6 and 12 months?
Yeah, that's very difficult to say. I'll take out my crystal ball and make a prediction. No, it's when you look at the leading benchmarking companies, they're predicting very slow recovery on a global scale. So I fully agree. Domestic travel is going to be the first thing that will really start coming back once the borders open. Then GCC travel. But it's we're in this for the long run. This is not going to be over very quickly, and we've seen the impact is still there. It's still spreading further and further. The are increasing on a global level. So we're it's not over yet. Hence, it's very difficult to what the next 6 months are going to say or going to bring. But it's definitely a slow recovery.
Dr. Saeed already mentioned that he had to actually put his traveling plans on hold. Mr. Michael, do you had such plans too, considering that we had summer break and Eid holidays? Did you have any travel plans that you had to put on hold too because of COVID-19 situation?
Yes, of course. We also planned our annual summer trip back home. But on the other hand, Oman has the fantastic advantage of providing so many beautiful spaces or places that you can visit interest. So I think we'll manage, even if we cannot travel further abroad, then we're still going to have a good and nice summer.
Absolutely. Mr. Amit, did you had to put your traveling plans on hold as well?
Yes, we were planning for a family reunion, and which was put on hold because of this pandemic and no flights and a lot of uncertainty. But we are managing well here in Oman because it's a wonderful place and a lot of scenic places which are not there in any other part of the world. That is what I can say.
Absolutely. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all once again for joining us in today's session. It was indeed very informative and interesting to know what's happening in the tourism sector and the hotels sectors in Oman, considering the COVID-19 situation and how things are likely going to shape in the next 6 to 12 months. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much for having us there. Yes.
Thank you so much for tuning in to our live session today at Outline. We'll be back again tomorrow at 2 p.m. with more updates your way. So keep watching TTV.